on, you guys? This is All Day Day 1, and I'm going to be giving you guys another Anomaly Trickster build video. So this build is going to be somewhat similar to the previous one, except you're not going to be revolving around epic gears, so it's going to be a little bit easier to get since the 3 legendary set pieces are going to be Edge of Time. And the thing is, what's nice about legendary is they come as a static stat, and the static stats for this is actually really good. So it makes this build 100 times better than the epic version. Now, the epic version is still a really good set to use, or a good setup to use, if you don't have these 3 pieces. If you don't have these 3 pieces, keep using that build that I had previously posted if you have those pieces, or even close to them. But with Edge of Time, what's nice about it is it gives you 100%, that's double the damage of Temporal Blade and Cyclone Slice. Now with Cyclone Slice, you're not going to actually use it because you don't need it. It's really not that great, and you don't need the health regen from it because you're getting enough health regen from Time Rift and your pistols. And I will explain that in the video as well for those of you that didn't watch the previous video as well. But yeah, let's go ahead and just go right into it. So like I had mentioned, the pistols is what's going to help you keep your health up because you're going to be able to apply status effects. So you have a Mark of Stake, or Mark of the Stake, and Snow Squall. Mark of the Stake is going to allow you to apply burn on enemies, and Snow Squall will allow you to freeze enemies. All you have to do is just shoot the enemies one time, and as long as they get hit, once you reload, the enemies that were just hit are applied with fire and ice. Having both of those effects on the enemies is going to increase your survivability from 1 to 100 super easily, not just for yourself but for your team as well. The stats you want to make sure you have on it is going to be Weapon Life Leech, Status Power, and Skills Life Leech. Now, Weapon Life Leech isn't necessarily important because you're not always going to be shooting only, because, I mean, you can't, but you can if your skills are on cooldown. Now, Status Power and Skills Life Leech is important to have because the more Status Power you have and Skills Life Leech you have, the more you get healed. Since with Skills Life Leech, Status Power affects or is added on top of Skills Life Leech. So the more status you have, the more damage you're doing with your burn, the more health you're getting back. Next up, you have the Goggles of the Edge of Time. So like I had mentioned, you want to make sure you have the 3 pieces of Edge of Time. The 3 pieces you want to have is going to be the head, the chest, and the legs, because all 3 of them share the same stats. All 3 of them have Anomaly Power, Cooldown Reduction, and Skills Life Leech. So those 3 are actually really good, and I mean, it's really lucky to have all of those because the last 2 pieces we won't need to spec into Skills Life Leech. But with the Edge of Time mask, you want to make sure you put a little bit of pain on it. A little bit of pain is a Time Rift ability mod. Using the skill deals 56.4k damage over 10 seconds to affected enemies or targets. So the thing is, it doesn't matter how much damage this does, it's the fact that you're getting healed over time with every enemy that's affected by Time Rift. So you don't need to worry about having that high amount of damage with Time Rift because that's not what it's about. It's only about the fact that you're getting healed. And then with the first perk, with it being said 50%, it's not that you're getting a 50% added. You're just able to do another 50% extra damage with the second temporal hit. So if an enemy has already been affected by temporal blade, they're going to be affected again by another hit by 50%. Next up is going to be the chest piece. So Armor of the Edge of Time, same stats, Anomaly Power, Cooldown Reduction, and Skills Life Leech. It's going to have Wind Slash and another Cyclone mod. So unfortunately, you can't take both of them off. You can only take one of them. And I mean, it would have been cool if you could replace both of them, or if one of them had a Temporal Blade perk on it. But with this, you just want to replace one or the other. It doesn't matter which one you do. I would just replace the first one, and I put Slasher on it. Temporal Blade, the skill can be activated one more time before targeting or before triggering the cooldown, which means you basically get 2 Temporal Blades, but you do have to make sure you use both in order for the cooldown to kick in, which is why I normally try to gather up as many enemies around me, and then I use the Time Rift, and then I'll use both of my Temporal Blades on the Elite, so that way they're able to take more damage, and then most likely end up dying, especially if you're going against something like a Broodmother where they have a lot of health and armor or resistance. So being able to use both temporal blades on them will do a lot of damage. Sometimes it won't kill them outright, but it will do a lot of damage, doing maybe about half their health, and then obviously just wait for your cooldown. So now on your legs, called Pants at the Edge of Time, you're going to have the same thing: Anomaly Power, Cooldown Reduction, and Skills Life Leech. The mod that I ended up putting on here, I don't remember what the tier 3 mod was that was originally on here, but I replaced it with Captain Hunter. Captain Hunter gives you an additional 25% damage increase against elites. Elites being things like the Broodmother or the Crawler or the Minigunner guys, you know, just pretty much anyone that has a skull on your minimap are elites. So bosses are included. So this extra 25% is going to be huge in damage output, as well as that strong slice from Temporal Blade being able to increase your damage by 56.5k damage. So both of those are really, really strong and high damage outputs right there already alone. So I would highly recommend Captain Hunter. Now for the gloves, it doesn't matter what type of gloves you have as long as it has Anomaly Power, Cooldown Reduction, and Status Power. Luckily the gloves I have looks like they kind of match the Legendary gear set. Now the reason why you want to have Status Power instead of Skill Life Leech is because Status Power, like I had mentioned earlier, also affects the amount of status or the Skill Life Leech you're getting, since the more damage you do with fire, the more health you get back. Now the gloves came with Bullet Kindling, which is a tier 2 mod, so they can always come with the bullet kindling as long as it's a purple item. And what that does is it gives me 20% more damage to enemies affected by fire. And then I also put on Pain Transfer, which comes from the Legendary gear set for a Trickster, where for the slow bubble set, I don't remember what it's called, but it's for the Time Rift. 10% of the weapon damage and 30% of your anomaly damage is affected by everyone that is affected by the Time Rift. So if I were to hit one enemy with the Temporal Blade and like 10 enemies are affected by the Time Rift, then all the other 9 enemies are going to be taking 30% of what I just did to that one enemy. Now if I were to have all of them bunched up into one and I hit all of them at the same time, they're going to take so much more damage, because it's like the damage is transferring, 100% of that damage is transferring between all of them, if that makes sense. So I would highly recommend having that in general, because it's an amazing mod to have. So now the last piece of gear is going to be your foot gear. The foot gear you want to have is going to also be Anomaly Power, Cooldown Reduction, and Status Power. So you want to make sure you have the long range for Time Rift, because if you just have the normal radius of the Time Rift, you'll be very sad with how big this Time Rift is. It's a very small Time Rift by itself, but if you add the Time Rift long range mod, it increases it, obviously triples it, but it increases the width and the length of the range of the Time Rift. It's just, well, it's needed. So if you're using, well, when you're using Time Rift, make sure you have this. Otherwise, it is going to completely kill your build and your survivability, because you're not going to be able to put out the damage with it, and you won't be able to survive without it. The next mod is going to be Phantom Dash. Phantom Dash is incredibly useful. I know it's not necessarily needed because you can still roll without Phantom Dash, but the thing with Phantom Dash is you have a faster roll or dodging animation. You can dodge through your enemies. There are a few issues with it too, sometimes where when you dash or when you do dodge, you end up like kind of getting stuck in an enemy, or you end up clipping like a wall, or not a wall but like the corner, and it just gets annoying. But for the most part, Phantom Dash is a very, very, very useful ability to use. So now for your skills. The 3 skills you're going to be using is Hunt the Prey, Time Rift, and Temporal Blade. For those of you that don't know, Hunt the Prey is the ability that allows you to teleport from where you're at to the enemy that you target. Now, there are a couple issues that's already known with the developers with Hunt the Prey. Is when you use the ability, it's either you use it and it uses the actual skill, but it doesn't actually teleport you to the enemy. And then the other issue is when you you're trying to use it, but you can't, and you just keep spamming to use it, but it doesn't actually go off. So the only reason why both of those happen is normally because you have a wall in front of you, or the enemy's back is actually against a wall or something, or there's a cover that they're sitting in. Sometimes when there is a cover they're sitting in, sometimes you can teleport to them and sometimes you can't. Most of the time, like 80-90% of the time, you can teleport to them, but when it happens to where you can't actually teleport to them, or when the teleport doesn't actually work, it becomes an issue, and it gets very, very, very annoying and frustrating, because then you end up getting killed. And then Time Rift is going to be, like I said, very important to use, especially when you increase the radius on this and you get the pretty much all the mods for it, all the right mods that I had just shown you, is what makes Time Rift so makes it the best skill in this whole tree, pretty much. Venator's Mark or Venator's Knife is a good option due to the fact that it will double the damage that you do with Temporal Blade, basically. So I'm already doing about 1.6 mil without the Venator's Knife. So with it, I'll be doing over 3.2 million damage with it. But then again, I lose out on Time Rift or Hunt the Prey, and those two talents or those two skills are very much more important than anything else on this tree when it comes to an Anomaly Trickster build. And then you have Temporal Blade, which again is your main damage dealer here. This is what's going to be your bread and butter. Unfortunately, I mean, I could technically get the Temporal Blade down to about 6 seconds if I added the cooldown perk from the Temporal mod, but I would have to I'd have to lose out on some damage for it. But I mean, it's a possible idea. Like, if you wanted to get that Temporal Blade to get a much lower cooldown, you could technically do that as well on your gear piece. Now onto the class tree. So for the Trickster, it's a close range, hit and run, and space-time type of character or class. Melee skill, you deal 48.4k damage and inflict slow, and for the healing mechanic, anytime there's an enemy killed in close range, or anytime you kill an enemy in close range, it grants you shield and health back. You get 5 additional max health and 5% damage mitigation whenever you use a shield. You get 20% for both max health and shield for enemies in close range. Now, this is how you're going to basically want to go or follow the path for the class tree in order to really maximize the amount of damage and whatnot that you'll be able to do with this build. So here are the stat sheet that I have. I know I should have probably posted this a little earlier after I showed you guys all the gear pieces, but you know, it's fine for those of you that are still here watching. This is the stats that you want to be at around when you do run this build. Yeah, so as this is with everything pretty much maxed out except for my global cooldown. Global cooldown maxes at 37.5%, and unfortunately I ran out of resources for my global cooldown reduction, so I was stopped at 34.1%. But as long as you're over 30%, you should be fine. But obviously 37.5 is going to be really good. And then the status power is going to cap at about 90% when you max out on both the pistols and the two items, the gloves and the boots. And then yeah, your skill damage bonus is going to also be capped to 27.54%. Or not, 27.54% basically. But yeah, that's pretty much it with this video. If this helped you guys out, go and leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions or concerns with the build, let me know any questions that you have, and I will try my best to answer them to the best of my ability. And yeah, now if you want to go ahead and watch it's only a silver, but it's a tier 15 Coliseum clear, I will be posting that as well. And it is about I want to say an 18-19 minute video, so if you do have the time and you want to check out how this build works in the tier 15 solo, then go ahead and check that out. But yeah, like I said, if you guys have any questions or concerns, let me know down in the comment section. I will try my best to help you guys out. I am planning on making other builds, like an actual firepower build for the Trickster, and possibly even a support build for the Trickster. So yeah, be on the lookout for that, and other classes. So that's pretty much it. This is all Day 1. Have a good day, good night, and peace.